Hi, I'm Randy. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is the YouTube channel dedicated to the development and construction of the Lake Erie and North Shore Railroad. Welcome to episode 5. And in this episode, we tackle the Torti. So we're going to look at the switch preparation, bench preparation, the Tortoise preparation, the installation of the Tortoise switch machines, and then the finishing touches of cutting the actuating wires and things like that down to size. So this is an action-packed episode, and it is going to be underway as soon as we inject some railroad soul. Across the prairies to the sea, they laid the iron for the rails that we ride. They shared their lives, their hearts, and their pride. Thought I'd give you a little bit of an idea of how I install the Tortoise slow motion switch machines. I know there's lots of videos out there about this and lots of good ideas. I do mine probably just a little bit different, so I thought I'd bring everybody up to speed on how to do this, or how I do it. So the first thing is, before I go under the table or under the layout, I want to make sure that I've got everything I need. So I get one of these trays. I make sure I've got everything I need on this tray before I go under. And this is an idea I got. I can't remember where I got it. I'm sorry guys if you gave me that idea. Then I'll send me let me know in the notes below, or in the questions or quotes or responses or whatever, and I'll give you credit for it. But anyway, I saw this person got one of these trays. Now you can get these, you can go to like a thrift shop or something. They're like $1 to get one of these things. So I got a bunch of these, and this one's good for the slow motion Tortoise machines because it has just the perfect amount of things on it. So basically, I'm going down under the layout. I want to make sure I've got everything I need. So what I do is I make sure I have these pliers. Now these pliers are going to be used for these suitcase connectors, which I use to hook the wires, the droppers, to the main for the switches. I'm also going to have some of these ties, because these ties are really handy in tying the wires from the switch machines up as we go. I also have this little I suppose it's a copy or a draft, a copy of the whole situation for the Tortoise machines, so it's like a jig. So if I put it on here, now I've put this a little bit different than normal because I put that up through the hole so that I can rotate the jig appropriately for where this has to sit. But anyway, these holes line up, you can see. Okay, so I can use this and then just use my magic marker to mark them. Now after a while, I developed a new system, and I'll show you a little bit about that later. But basically, I use a much longer version of the driver ride that's going up here, so that when I put this up through the hole, I have room to move the Tortoise around a little bit, and that allows me to get my drill in and drill basically to the exact spot where that tortoise has to be. So I'll show you, I'll go under the table and under the layout and show you this for real, but right now I'm just describing it. Now, so you need your, your handy dandy screwdriver to make sure that if you need to tighten screws or anything here, you have that with you. I have this screwdriver which drives the screws in to hold the tortoise in. This is clippers that I have just to, you just never know when you're going to need clippers underneath the table. This is a little straight screwdriver, and this is a little straight screwdriver. Okay, and that's in case some of the actuate connectors come out, and I'll show you those in a second. These are the suitcase connectors I use, and then these are the screws. So the screws I use to put my tortoises in are this. It's a 6G 12mm. They work really good. And then of course I have my drill, which I'm going to put in here, which has the drill bit in there for a 6G screw, and I have my stapler, which I also put on top. Then of course I put the tortoises in once they're prepared. Okay, now I'm going to show you how I prepare those. Just move this out of the way for a second. Okay, so these are the tortoise machines that everyone knows and loves, and what I have found is that I got about halfway through installing these on the layout, and I use these actuate connectors. So this is my cable, which is carrying my wires back to my control panel. But this is the connector I use, which normally would just snap on there. Okay, now for some reason, after I ordered my newest batch of Tortoise slow motion machines in, these won't fit. Okay, so I don't know what is going on with that, but so now I'm in a situation where I've got all these wires already made with the actuate connectors on them, but my tortoise machines won't fit. So what I do is I take a clipper and I line this up. I'm just going to get real close here so you can see. I line the clipper up so that it's just on the outside of that connector, and then I cut it. I go to the other side, line it up so that it's just the other side of that connector, and then I cut it. Sorry, earthquake. Now these fit. Now I've done this a number of times and they all work perfectly. Okay, so I don't know what happened. I think probably Circuitron decided to stabilize these a little better and make them wider or something, but that means that all the other accessories don't work. So this now fits. Voila. Okay, now I'm just going to stop. Well, I won't stop. I'll just keep going here for a sec. So I use thicker wire to use to switch the switch, so the action rod. So this is the rod that you get with the Tortoise machine, and this is the one I use. So this is a 1mm piano wire, or string piano wire, basically 1mm piano wire. You can see if I lay these side by side, you can see that there is a difference. And then I also use a much longer one to start with. Okay, it's because I want a little extra room at the top so that when I'm moving my tortoise underneath the table, it's not going to come out of the hole. Okay, because anyone who's done this before will know, once you get that switch in place and you try to put this in and then it comes out of the hole, it's a real hard thing to get back in. It takes a little bit of patience, unless you get lucky, but I don't want to do that. So I've just made it a bit longer, and then in the end I just come and cut it off with a Dremel tool. And I'll show you a little trick I learned about that too. Okay, so I use thicker wire, which means it doesn't fit in the hole that's already there in the Tortoise machine. So that means I have to drill this hole out. So I'm just going to reposition the camera and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, so I've just got a small vise. I'm just going to put my Tortoise machine in, and I just tighten it up snug so that it's not moving when I push on it. Let's put this in the center more. And now I just bring this little black actuator into the center, and this is the hole that we're going to have to enlarge here. So we just take our drill. Now you go I'm just going to try and do it with, you just line it up and just have very light pressure. And you just take it in so the drill bit goes in just a tad. And then I usually take one of these rods and just make sure that it fits in. Perfect. And in fact, that could be a little bit deeper. So I'm going to drill this a little bit deeper. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, now I'll show you how I bend the rods. Okay, so with your Tortoise machine, you're going to get one of these pieces of paper which has instructions on it. And the thing we're going to look at right now is this little stick drawing, which shows you the correct orientation that you need for your wire. Now, what I have found, because this is thicker wire, it's a little bit harder to bend. So I use a flat pair of pliers here. I also use a needle nose pair of pliers. So what I do is I place this in the end, probably giving myself a little bit extra length than what I need. Take the needle nose pliers, and we just bend that right over. Just like that. Okay. Then I just take the pliers down just a tad. And you don't have to have a lot of bend in this, just a very, very minor bend. And then we line this up. And you see that's pretty good. I just have to take a little bit off here, and you'll notice mine is much longer. Okay, so I just take pliers and cut a little bit off here. Sorry, where you can see. And you just want to make sure that when you cut it, it's a straight cut. And then you take your Tortoise machine, which you prepared that we just drilled, and we just see if this fits in the hole. Look at that, it's perfect. Okay, now also with the Tortoise machine, you're going to get the hardware to hook this in. And I usually do mine right on the bench rather than trying to do it under the table. So with your Tortoise machine, you're going to get a little bracket that looks like this, and you're going to get a little self-tapping screw. So what these are for, so first of all, what I do is I take the wire, put it in, I start the screw gently in the hole, and then I screw the screw in, holding the wire in place. I don't know if you can see that. But you just want to apply very gentle pressure, no more than you have to. You can see that little black thing is moving a little bit, and it's okay as long as the pressure isn't too much. So I'm going very gentle on here. What you want to do is make sure that this goes in so that that wire is tightly held in there. So that wire is not going anywhere. And then you feed the wire through. Okay. And then you slide this into place. And I usually start it at about halfway. And now this is going to determine the distance of throw that the machine does. Okay, and as I go higher, the throw goes less. If I go lower, the throw goes more. So now this Tortoise machine is ready to mount. So I'm going to do a few more. I've got 4 left to do. I'm going to do these 4, then I'll take you under the table and we'll show you how we mount. Don't go away, it's going to get exciting now. Okay, so before we go under the table, now that we have our Tortoise switch machines all ready, before we go under the table, I thought I'd go on top of the layout and show you how to prepare the actual switches for installation of the Tortoise machines. So I have used a technique where I leave enough space at the end so that I can just pull these back, and that allows me the ability to pull my switch out. Now before I do that, I've just pulled this end off here. Now what I do is I put the switch rods so that they're right in the center. I stick a pin in there, and then I slowly pull this up, and I mark where that pin is with a magic marker, because occasionally you can't tell where that pin has gone. Now I've pre-drilled these holes, but this is how I did it. So I've marked that, and then I pull the switch out, turn it over, and in this particular switch you'll see that there are areas right here where there is no rail, so that the manufacturer has made this easy. Made this easy for us, because they've left the rails uncovered, and that's where we're going to connect our 2 rails together so that we're not dependent upon these contacts here for power. Okay, so again, flip it over, we find those. Now on some switches, for instance this one, okay, there is no rails uncovered. So what I've done is I have marked with a magic marker, you see right across there, where I'm going to take those rails out. I'm going to take you over to the other bench and show you how to do this, and how to prepare these with the wiring and everything, and also removing the little springs that are in here that have to come out. Okay, now back to our old switch here. So this was the switch in place. We've marked where the big hole is going to go. Okay, now we need to mark where our power wires, or droppers, or feeders are going to go. So all I do there is I flip it over, and you can see where the rails are not. I put it back in place. What I do is I take a pin, see where the rails are not. I don't know if you can see this with my hand in the way, so I'm just going to try it with a different thing here. There we go. So I put the pin right on the area. And you can see that. So put the pin there, because what happens is you put this switch back in place and you'll lose your spot. So I just hold that pin there, and that allows me to get this switch back into the proper position. Line it up. There's my pin. Then I mark it with a marker. Do the same on the other side. Pull it off. And now I've drilled these holes already. Okay? And I've done it for the remaining 4 switches that we have left to do. So now we're going to go over to the bench and I'll show you how to prepare these switches. Then we'll come back and we'll go under the table and put them in. Okay, so I'm over at the workbench now and I've got that switch laid down, and I'm going to show you how to prepare this. Now, the first thing we do is take out this little spring. Now, let me just bring this up so maybe you can see. Now, right there, you see that little spring wire? And that has to come out. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do this. What I do is I just take my little screwdriver, pull it out like that. So you can see that that's now pulled out of there. And then I take my little clippers and I just come in and grab the end of that that's out. Okay. And what I'm going to do is slowly and gently turn this until I can get it to release on the inside. It's a little tougher than it looks, actually. This little spring is pretty tough. I've tried cutting them. There it goes. But it really is easier just to bend it slightly until it comes out. Okay? So that's now gone. You make sure to throw that in the garbage. You don't want that getting on your track somewhere. So now the switch has no spring and it moves very, very easily. Okay? And everything's still intact. Push on the back too. So that's the best way I've found to do that. There's all kinds of different ways. You can take the back off and but I'll tell you what, it's really, really hard to get that back on, is what I found. Okay, so that's how I do it. So now we flip it over and I'm going to show you now how to prepare the switch, put the wires on. Now I use this diamond file. I don't know if you can see it with the glare. Diamond file. It was like $2, I think, at one of these little nifty shops. Okay, but what it is a very fine file. See that? Okay, this is like my favorite file for doing this, and for doing track connections, by the way. So we are going to go down, and I'm just going to gently lay the file in here and just go across all 4. And all we want is to rough it up. See how that's, I don't know if you can see that, but it's just roughed up. See that? Just roughed up enough so that we can get the solder on. I'm just going to do this one at the end a little more. So that's roughly what you want. Okay? Then I use this pen flex in a pen. Okay, and so what it is, you just take this end off, and then when you push this against something, it pumps the flex out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to give a little bit of flex on each one. For this, you only needed 1 pump, and then you can use that for all of them. Now these are my feeder wires, which I'm going to use. Now, I've just done a normal removal on the ends here. Just hold on a second, let me show you. All right, now I'm going to try and run these wires across both of these. So I need to have a little bit more wire exposed. So I'm just gonna show you. But what you do is you just put this in here. So normally you would put the wire in like that and then do it. All I'm gonna do is just put a little bit of the wire out like that, come in, and then that exposes more wire, see? So now hopefully this is gonna fit across here. And you'll see that it will just fit. So that's perfect. I'll take my other one, do the same thing. Perfect. These tools are amazing, by the way. I would get one of these if you don't have one of these. This is a KYP, but this thing is amazing. It saves so much time and aggravation. So you get one of those if you don't have one. So now we've got our flux down. So now what we're going to do is just tin the ends of these wires here a little bit. So I'm just going to get the soldering iron, bring it over. Okay, good. Now I'm just going to move this a bit. And we're just going to tin the end of this. Now, one of the things that I also wanted to remind everyone about is make sure your iron is clean, because when it sits there it oxidizes a little bit, and then so what you want is your tip to look like that. Okay? Then when you apply the solder to it, it's going to take it right away like that. Okay? And then we're just going to tin this wire. There we go. And you don't need a lot on it. You're going to put a little drop on the tracks anyway. Bring the switch back in. Okay, so now we're just going to put a little drop of solder. Sorry about that, earthquake. It's my cloddy feet. And we're just going to drop a little bit of solder on each one of those. Like that. Then we're going to clean the iron. Okay, then we're going to just get a little touch on the end of that iron. Bring in the red. Now it's important, make sure you double check to make sure which side the wires go on. I've double checked and I know my red goes on the curved side out. So all I'm going to do now is just touch the one end. Touch the other end. And there we go. There's our wire nicely soldered. Turn it over. Do the black. Just a nice little tin on the black wire. Like I say, you don't need a lot, just a little bit. Just get a touch on that iron. Bring in the black. Touch. Touch. I always give it a good tug, make sure it's on. And there's our track wired. So now our switch wired, the spring is out. Okay, so I'm going to take this over and install it on the layout now. Okay, so this is that that switch that I told you I would show you how to get these ties out. So you can see I've marked that with a magic marker. Right about here is where we want to take those out. Now there's a lot of different ways that I've seen that people use to take these out. Some people use a X-Acto knife, some people use a chisel. What I do is I just use these little clippers. But what you have to make sure is that when you're clipping, you don't nick your track. Okay, so you only take the points just far enough that it cuts plastic and not the tracks. And then I just do this all the way through. Sorry, put this back in. And always cut with the flat side towards the rail. And you really do have to take your time. Make sure this is done right. Flat side to the rail, all the way down. Okay, now that we've done that, we just take our pliers here, and usually these come out pretty easily. Sorry. Excuse me. Now if they don't, that's fine. You can just go back and recut them. And then once you get these out, for the most part, now you just take that file again, and you just give them a file, so there we have them out. They're nice and filed, and now we just go ahead and mount our feeders to that the same way we did before. Okay, so I'll mount this. This is the final one. So I'll mount this one, and then I'll see you under the table, and we'll put those Torti in. All right, now I remember I mentioned back in the video or the episode where we were putting in the yard, I think it was yard construction or building yard or something, that I would show you how to prepare these types of the old Atlas switches that have this sort of mechanism on the side, how we would prepare those. Now there's normally two little screws in here. I've already taken those two little screws out, so you just take them out, and then simply once they're out, you just slide this mechanism out just like that. So now it comes apart, and I keep these. I don't know why, but I do. I keep them, so I'll just put that aside right now. Now you'll see you've got these funny screw hole things here, and you've got a little mechanism here, and these things just don't look real. Okay, so what we have to do is trim this up. First thing is we just can clip this. Okay, now you want to make sure you clip it so that it isn't too short, that it slides out of this little groove here. Okay, you want to make sure that it's long enough to go both ways and move. And then what we're going to do is we're going to clip this next one off the same height. And then we're going to clip, this is a little bit trickier, but we're just going to clip these two in the center. Just like this. That's good. Then we're just going to come this way. So what we're trying to do here, as close as we can, is to get a type of a rail coming out here. Not a rail, a tie coming out. That, good. And then we're just going to clip these a little bit shorter. Yes. And then we're just going to come in here again, a little clip there. And a little clip on the inside of that round piece. So we just want to make these look a little bit better than they did. So you get the general idea. So now this looks much more realistic than it did before. When we get the ballast on that, you're hardly going to notice the difference. Okay? So that's how we take care of those old Atlas switches, make them look somewhat real. Now you can spend some more time on this here and, you know, square that off. I'll probably do that. And you could even do that with a file. Just take your file, and you see that squares that off nicely. Okay, I'll just do this one too. Okay, so you can see, starting to square them off, and that looks pretty good. Which get, like I said, when you get the ballast down there, you won't notice any difference hardly. Okay, so let's get back, and we'll finally get under the table and under the bench and do some Torti installation. Okay, so we're under under the layout, and these are the two droppers that are coming down from the switch. There's the hole for the Tortoise throw bar to go through, and if I just zoom right up, there is the hole in the switch that we need to put that Tortoise throw bar through. Okay, now This is going to be quite tricky. I'm going to try and do this without too much aggravation out of it. Okay, so I think I have that position, so you're going to be able to see now. My hands are probably going to be getting in the way of this. I'm going to try and keep them out as much as possible. So here comes our tortoise machine. And so we can put the tortoise this way, or we can put the tortoise this way, but it needs to line up with the two droppers coming out, because that will make sure that the switch is switching at 90 degrees up the stairs there. So I think I'm going to put it in this way, and just let me see if I can get this throw bar through that hole. It's sometimes a little challenging. There we go, I think, yep. So now we're through. So this is the position in which the tortoise has to sit in order to make sure that the throw bar is throwing correctly. So a couple things you could do. You could mark this with a magic marker. Just grabbing my marker. Okay, now, this is where having that extra long throw bar comes in handy. Okay, because now I have my holes marked where I want to drill. And now I can just flip my tortoise out of the way, and the throw bar is still in the hole. Just gonna drill a hole, and another one, and flip this one out of the way. And this one. Okay, so now what I have found, I've got my holes drilled. What I have found works best is if you take a couple screws and start them just with your fingers. Sorry, just trying to move my hands out of the way. You can see what I'm doing here. That was to let you see what I've done. Put one screw in. Just put another one in. And I'm just starting them just enough to hold them in place so that I can get my screwdriver in. And just tighten them in a little bit. Don't want to tighten them in too much just yet. Just want to get that. Okay, so there's what we have so far. Two screws slightly in. The tortoise isn't sort of in place yet. But I'm going to just slide it into the grooves now. There we go. So they've slid it into the grooves. Now I'm just going to tighten these a little bit more. Just enough so that hopefully will stay in place. so that I don't have to hold it so much. I will show you what I've got done here in a second. Sorry about my mitts in the way. This is difficult under here, as you can imagine. Okay, so that you can see that that's in place now. Now I'm just gonna do the same thing with the other screws on the other side. These are slightly more difficult. Now, I've tried it a lot of different ways, and that, believe it or not, seems to be the best way. Is just start it, and then now once you got it going, screw that in. And really, once you get 3 screws in, that tortoise is pretty secure, but I always put 4 in. Because I'm a bit pedantic that way, I think. That way I know the tortoises are sturdy and in place. There you go, that's very sturdy, going nowhere. Okay, that one's in. Now we're just going to hook these dropper wires to the appropriate bus, and these are going right over here to the B1 bus. Okay, so I have strung the acolyte receptor that I've already wired, and then I just click this on here, that, and then I take this little bit of wire here, and I want to just have a little bit of slack here. I'm going to take this wire, and I'm going to just strap it with just enough slack to hold that in place so there's no pressure on the Tortoise machine. Okay, and then that Tortoise machine is hooked up, and we'll go hook it to the control panel and see if it works. All right, be back in a minute. Okay, this is the switch that we put in under the layout. And I'm just going to click it now. Okay, now as you can see, the actuating rod is still sticking way up, but I'll show you how to cut that off next. And then we'll have completed the installation, so the preparation of the Tortoise machines, the preparation of the switches, installation, and then finally cutting the actuating rods. Okay, so we're going to just continue on and cut these rods that are sticking up from the Tortoise machines. Okay, now what I have found, if you use the Dremel tool, okay, with the cut blade on it, one thing you have to watch out for is if you just start cutting, so if you just come in and start to cut these, what tends to happen, or what can happen, is that this gets very hot. Okay, so this little rod coming up, because it's thicker than normal, gets really hot, and then it will melt the plastic of the hole that it's coming through, and it will just move, like melt right out of that hole. So what I found, and that's really frustrating, because then you have to do a patch job on it, or drill another hole, some other solution that you have to do to get that rod through. So what I found is, if you take a pair of clippers, clipper pliers like these, and just gently hold the wire. You're not trying to cut it, you're just holding it in place. But the bevel on these allows you to get down close enough so that when you do cut it, it's low enough so that the trains won't hit it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you how to do that, and it's going to get a bit noisy because I'm going to turn on the Dremel. I'm actually going to do the cut on the video so you can see it. Now, I will remind you, when you're using any kind of power tools that have some kind of rotating device, make sure you wear safety glasses, because things can fly, and these cut blades are notorious for breaking and cracking and coming and basically firing across the room. Okay, so let's give this a go and see if we can get this cut. The second time is I just wanted to make sure that there was no rough edges on that, and I think this is going to work. Yeah, it's not hitting the car at all. Yeah, very nice. Okay, so that's how you cut those off. I would highly recommend that you use something like a pair of pliers like this to hold it in place, because you get really frustrated if you just try to cut the wire and it gets too hot and melts out. Okay, excellent. So that's it for our installation of switches. So switch preparation, the Tortoise preparation, Tortoise installation, and now cutting off the bars. And now we just enjoy this switch machine working. Okay, catch you next time. Stay safe.